At 10:06, as you know, I've called the Republican representatives and congressional delegation out for not getting involved in the governor's race. So we heard from Mike Johnson. We heard from Kennedy was the only one that's been really involved in it. I don't expect to hear anything from Garrett Graves at all. But Clay Higgins is the third one. I expected to hear from maybe 4 or 5 of them. So we'll see about Scalise maybe tomorrow. So we're looking forward to that. All right, let's jump gears. We have Mr. John Georges joins us. And first of all, good to hear from you, John. How you doing?
Good morning. It's always great to hear from you and be on your show. I miss talking to you.
Well, it's been a while. I think the last time I talked to you was Lemonade Day, because I think that's something you kind of got going. Yeah. How old is that now? Because you've been doing that for a while.
We're over 5 years and over 150,000 families, and it's really been a great event. We took it statewide, and we're really appreciative of all the sponsors and families up in the Monroe area and northern Louisiana, the rest of the state.
Well, let me just introduce John, of course. Now, he's been on this program before. Some of you younger people may not remember, but he did run for governor at one time. He's the owner of George's Enterprise, about a $2.5 billion wholesale grocery wholesaler. He's former candidate for governor. He owns the Advocate, the Times-Picayune, and y'all also own the Advocate in Lafayette as well. And so also part of a group, 30 business people. Y'all do some polling from years. Y'all been doing that for a while. And anyway, are you an independent Republican or Democrat now, by the way?
I'm a Republican. Okay. I was a lifelong Republican. I've been a Republican longer than Bobby Jindal. But when I ran for governor, he had already locked up all the endorsements. So I ran as a no party, which I would say independent, but Louisiana doesn't have an independent party. So I ran on my own, on my platform. Yeah. Which was a.
By the way, did you know they do have an independent party now? I think that gets on the ballot, or are they trying to get it on the ballot as independent party? I don't know if you knew that or not.
Unfortunately, we all talk about independence in Louisiana. They tend to vote more conservative, but no, independence. It's an interesting conversation for the country, but for me, I just felt that. The time I ran for governor was really Katrina, all the failures, all the on every level, local, state, and federal. And as a businessman that knew my businesses had done fairly well at a young age, that I knew that a lot about politics. So I put my hat in the ring, and I enjoyed every minute. I especially enjoyed being on your show and hearing from callers and getting to know, being around the state, which is such a great state, and love everybody in it. So
let me ask you a quick question, though. Did you run for mayor one time in New Orleans?
Yes.
But did you run as an independent, Republican, or Democrat?
No, I switched to Democrat. Louisiana has conservative Democrats. Everybody's young today doesn't remember, but this was a state. Actually, many Democrats in this state call themselves Republicans, but vote Republican, but stayed Democrat because they were they had the closed primary system where you couldn't vote. But no, that was you can't be mayor of New Orleans and be an independent or a Republican. So
okay, let me ask you.
But I switched back recently when Donald Trump became president.
Well, let me ask the question. I'm just curious about the Advocate and you jumping into journalism like that. What made you want to buy? I'm just going to start with the Advocate because you spread out since then. What made you say, you know what? I think this is a good investment. I know you're a business guy, so everybody looks at money and investments, and I know that part of it. But there had to be something else that drew you to doing that.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. So let's just start with running for governor and going around the state. And, of course, Imperial Trading, we supply most of the convenience stores in our state, all over the state. And after Katrina, we bought Harrison Company in Bossier, which was a 100-year-old company. We had already bought Pelican in Alexandria. So I was familiar with the state and going around to TV stations, radio stations, newspapers. Unfortunately, I'm sitting in there, trying to influence reporters and writers and get my message out there. But while I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about these as a business opportunity. And I liked the Advocate. I thought they had a brand new, modern facility. They did not endorse candidates, and they probably, of all the newspapers, probably wrote about me straight up, just who I was, and And I thought, one day, it was really after the mayor's race in New Orleans, I thought with Mitch Landrieu becoming mayor that New Orleans is going to go through a dark period. And so I started thinking of buying a Baton Rouge business. And I like to buy 100-year-old companies. And I started talking to the Advocate, and they had a brand new print facility. And LSU is in Baton Rouge, state government's in Baton Rouge, and it really just started out as thinking of getting into a different business, and having been exposed to them when I ran for office.
Yeah. What? Okay, you got it. You buy the business. I want to know if you can help us out with something. What is the purpose of the Advocate? What are you trying to do with the Advocate? I'm just curious.
A newspaper. Look, go back 100 years. There used to be so many papers. Even Louisiana, when I got in, had 100 newspapers. Some of them, like today, you have Fox News and CNN, and they all take their various positions. So if you go back in the history, you'll see people that were Confederates. You have people for the North. Over time, they all merged. Economics required mergers. So a newspaper has no longer one position, not one monolithic voice. Its job is to inform the public, tell them things that people are trying to, I don't want to say secrets of government, but, some of our friends don't run for office, don't want people to know things about them. So it's really informational to the public. Nowadays, it's local news. There's no way to find local news. People to go to city council meetings, school board meetings, talk about what was talked in the meetings, taxes, policy, cover news stories. Of course, like for the Advocate, LSU and Saints, we're the primary source of information on them. Prep sports. When you're living in North Louisiana and you're going to play in the state playoffs, you're following the team you're going to end up with in the playoffs. Sports, local coverage, and of course, it gives the advertisers an opportunity to advertise to the local people. So it does a lot of things. Obituaries. It's a very complicated machine. It's not the one thing you may care about. Like Moon, you're a conservative radio host, so that's the area that you focus on. But the guy next to you, he might just be a fanatic Saints fan. And so it's really a lot of things to a lot of people. It's very complicated. It's like owning an aircraft carrier. They're pilots landing planes. They're chefs cooking food. They're all kinds of different areas, and they're all working 24 hours a day.
Well, but you did hit something, and that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about the political side of it because and I'm gonna be honest with you. I've heard I read the Advocate, and I actually subscribe to you online, so I'm one of your subscribers. Good. Okay, and I've been very disappointed than what the paper used to be than what it is now. And let me make my case switch, and you'll have plenty of time to answer anything I say. But when I look at the Advocate now, and from the political side, and I've been saying this because the Advocate has all these writers, and they'll keep saying in opinion pieces and editorials, we don't want the partisanship from Washington to come to Baton Rouge and Louisiana. But I got to tell you, it's not the politics that comes here with y'all. I feel like CNN, MSNBC, and Washington Post have come here because I think politically y'all have jumped in the bandwagon of taking sides. And when I read the paper, it's 100% pro Bel Edwards. Now you can say, well, Moon, you don't like that. No, it's 100% pro Bel Edwards. And it doesn't matter what Bel Edwards does. Y'all will never question him on anything that the man does, and they will look the other way on most of the stuff. And that's my frustration with your paper and the writers that you have. Not all of them, because they offer you a couple good ones, but some of them are really bad, and the editorial positions are bad. And me and you kind of got into this, I ain't going to say peeing match, but we got back and forth when Vern Kennedy released a poll. And I think me and you got crossed because you think I'm talking about the poll, and I wasn't talking about the poll. I'm talking about the way things are released. And it's always pro-Edwards. It's been pro-Edwards from day one, and anybody that gets in the way, The advocate's going to beat him up. I mean, they have beat up John Kennedy when they thought he was running. They beat up Jeff Landry. They beat up Cameron Henry. They beat up Taylor Parra. My God, to death. Lance Harris, John Schroeder, Kyle Ondwine, Ralph Abraham, Eddie Rispone. And they never question all the things I could bring up for Edwards, and they won't question him at all. Now, John, I got to tell you, that's not the way to run a newspaper. And these people that you got working for you that are doing this, I'm telling you, I think I'm watching CNN in the newspaper. And I'm telling you, it's that bad now. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. A lot of people do.
Thank you for putting that out there. There's several. Look, I think about this every day. You know that. And first of all, have you ever heard of Fagan?
Yeah, Dan Fagan's one of the few that writes once a week. Yeah, I know you're talking about.
We never pick on John Bel Edwards. I think he picks on him every single
Hold
time.
up, though. There's an editorial award. You don't. That's opinion, guys. And that's only one. That's the only one.
You ever heard of Jeff Sato?
I heard of Jeff Sato.
Okay, so we hired Jeff Sato. Every day he challenged John Bel Edwards. So the truth is that it's not one monolithic voice.
That's not true.
I think we have changed. I think those of us that grew up a certain way and we learned to, I mean, are you telling me that John Bro wasn't a good senator or maybe over time? Did you like John Bro?
John Bro, he was all right. I didn't think he was nothing flashy, but he was one of the same things that happens here. They win, and then they stay around.
In that era, okay, we thought work in the middle. You know, Bob Livingston on one side, John Bro on the other, walking across the aisle. That's how we got things done. We grew up that way. I think Cedric Richmond, who ideologically you probably agree with him on zero. I think he and Steve Scalise are personal friends. They work together on a lot of things for Louisiana. So we grew up in that era where we work together. Today, there's a shift. You're either watching CNN or you're watching Fox News. And so that's we become. Look, I find myself not wanting to watch the other station, or watching these talk shows where you're watching them. You used to like the Tonight Show, and you can't watch it anymore. Saturday Night Live. So I think we have become less tolerant of the other view.
No, John, what I'm talking about is a few. I'm talking about a fun. No, listen, I'm talking about a 100% effort to get Bel Edwards reelected. I'll come back and explain that in a minute. John Georges is my special guest. He'll be here for the hour, and we'll go back and forth because there's some things I want to bring up. I just want you to talk about them and either justify them or tell me that I'm wrong. All right, John Georges is my special guest. He owns The Advocate, the Times-Picayune. He's got The Advocate in Lafayette as well. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. Special guest, Mr. John Georges. Of course, he owns the Advocate in New Orleans and also in Lafayette, among other business owners. He's a business guy. He's been around the game for a long time. Hey, John, you with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me answer some of those questions. First of all the people you mentioned, virtually all of them are either personal friends of mine, people. Cameron Henry is my senator in my district. Lance Harris is actually my customer, buys from Imperial every day. So I know intimately all of these peoples, and I know some of the coverage, and I want to talk about some of it. You said that The Advocate has never written anything bad about John Bel Edwards. That's just simply not true. I mentioned the columnist. You said, no, I'm not interested in the columnist. You know that a columnist, many people don't know the difference between a columnist, but you know that a columnist writes their own opinions,
yep.
And we print them, and we have national columnists, and some of them are pretty good. The national ones, I catch a lot of hell for, but they're really good. One in particular, a gentleman's a African American conservative, which is interesting. But Sunday, did you read the front page of The Advocate?
Man, this is Thursday, John.
Okay, Sunday,
I don't remember what you had on the front page today.
I'm not talking about next Sunday. I can tell you what. No, I'm kidding. But last Sunday, we had an article on a $200,000 PAC donor to the Gumbo PAC. So you ought to read that story. That's not a story that's kind to John Bel Edwards.
Let me give you some examples though. If John Bel Edwards I'll give you the great example. John Bel Edwards, in the last debate, when the last time he ran, said no on taxes. A Republican had said that, y'all be beating the hell out of him. They would. They would be beating him to death. Not one word, nothing ever about that. It would be news every day for y'all, and they don't say anything. Let me give you an example. And you read your own paper, because I'm sure you do. I mean, it's your paper. Do you believe John Bel Edwards inherited a budget deficit? I'm asking. Now, you read your own paper?
Yeah,
No, I'm asking. Do you believe that it's your paper that has put this out every day?
Not only did he inherit a deficit, I know that he moved dollars from future years, spent monies from future. They have these different government agencies that have money, and they move them from one period to the other. Yeah,
they move them all around. But my question was just simple. Do you think
I think he walked into a deficit situation.
Okay. Now, this is where I'm the only one shouting it. Your newspapers won't talk about it. I went back and looked at the voting record. You know, a voting record is
I'm the one paying these taxes.
No, I know that, Mr. George. I'm asking about your paper, though. Listen, I went back, and it was simple. Even a reporter could do it. Listen, he voted for 6 of the 8 Bobby Jindal budgets. Now, you just said he inherited it. An inheritance, my aunt died a few years ago. I got $25,000. That was an inheritance. My truck note, my house note, that's on me. That is not inherited in a budget. Yet your newspaper, every column they've ever written, John Bel Edwards inherited a budget. John Bel Edwards inherited a budget. That is not true. He was Jindal's floor leader for the Democrat Party. All this is true, but it never comes out in your paper. It only keeps telling us he inherited a budget. So he's writing, he's doing commercials saying he inherited this big old budget when he voted for it, John. I mean, look, the voting record on the website, sir, is sitting there for even a good reporter to find. Yet, they don't look at that at all. And I'm saying it's there. 6 of the 8 budgets. That's not an inheritance. He voted, and he was a floor leader for Bobby Jindal, and that's what blows my mind. He gets away to say, I inherited this from Bobby.
So you were pleased with Bobby Jindal?
Who, me? I was the first. John, I know you didn't know this. I voted for him the first time, didn't the second. Nobody ripped Bobby Jindal like I did for the whole 8 years. And matter of fact, John, I'm not a Republican because of Bobby Jindal. I know you didn't know that because you don't get to hear me in New Orleans, but that's a fact. Nobody was hard on Jindal than me. I was twice as hard on him as I have been on Edwards because Bobby didn't work out. Anyway, look, hold your thought on that because I want you to answer that for me. Because do you think that's a budget deficit he inherited if he voted for 6 of the 8? John Alario voted for all 8. We'll be right back. Hello, welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. It's the Hickson Has It hotline. Mr. John George is my special guest. He is a business guy. He's been in Louisiana, I'm going to say all your life, but you've been a successful business guy for many, many years. He owns the Advocate, of course, now, and he's bought Tom's-Picayune, also the one in Lafayette, which, by the way, Gannett used to cover the most areas, but the Advocate actually covers the most areas now. John, real quick, and I'm going to let you answer everything I said, but just the question on did he inherit that budget, if he voted for 6 of the 8 of them, don't you think somebody should look at that and just question that?
They will, and they do. That's come up several times. I think, there are people that look for. Everyone wants to read the paper and agree with everything they read in the paper, and the governor doesn't like everything we read about him. Maybe he hadn't made as many. Maybe on physical matters you don't agree, but on other matters he hadn't made the mistakes of a lot of people before him. So you don't see things. Do you agree with his position on abortion? Is that an issue that you're aligned with?
I'm glad he's pro-life, but I got questions on that as well. When you put Rebecca Gee, who's pro-abortion, as your first Department of Health and Hospitals, one of his first picks to put over health and hospitals, and she's big-time pro-abortion. A lot of his money he gets from national people. He raised $100,000 from Governor Northern. He did a fundraiser for him. That guy believes in abortion before and after. So I'm kind of mixed on that. Yes, he says that, and yes, he probably is, and I'm going to say he is. But why would you take so much money from pro-abortion people?
Yeah, well,
I'm just asking. I'm just asking. We just talk.
So, let me ask you something. Would you like the Advocate to have both sides of an issue?
I would. You know what I want the Advocate to do?
Or
and
would
I'll
you
go back to what I
only
started.
have the sides you agree with?
I want the Advocate to be honest, and I don't think they are. I think they bias big time, and I think they go after what they want to go after, John. I really do. That's why I brought up the point about just a couple things on the lies and the taxes, and things of that nature. I just think if you're going to listen, let me give you a great example. You remember the computer contract with the Secretary of State's office. Now, Kyle Armstrong wasn't the Secretary of State at the time; it was Shetler, and they signed the contract, and Governor Edwards and Jay Darden decided to rip it down. Okay, and Kyle Armstrong got beat up, and Shetler and them got beat up for a contract, but we got a Medicaid contract that has a bunch of stuff in it. And y'all are covering the story, okay? But I hadn't seen the opinion piece like they did dealing with Kyle Armstrong and them about the elections contract. And, just two different things. I'm going to tell you, I've looked at y'all really as the press secretary for Bel Edwards. Just because y'all beat up anybody that got close to him, anybody that challenged him in opinion pieces and editorial pieces, they've beat him up. They just beat him up, and they don't ever challenge this guy on anything. I could give y'all 20 things to challenge him on right now. And
maybe I need to come in that studio so I can answer some of these questions, because on the phone it's hard to.
Listen,
interrupt you.
I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I'll come to New Orleans. We'll set up a studio. Me and you can talk for 2 hours. I don't have a problem with that at all.
You write a column?
No, not interested in that at all.
It takes a lot of time.
Well, let's move on then. Let's move on to something you're gonna know, that I'm gonna know, that we both know because we had a discussion. You were vacationing, and Tyler Bridges, I call him the twit, by the way, if you go look the definition of the twit. But anyway, Tyler writes a piece on a poll that was done by Vern Kennedy. I was never interested in talking about Vern Kennedy, but Vern got mixed in it because I was not downgrading the poll. I was downgrading the way it was released. Now, this is your newspaper, okay? The poll was 2 months old, okay? Me and you talked, and you told him, Tyler, he could release it, but when he released it, he didn't give us the numbers. He didn't give us the margin of error. He didn't give us who paid for it. And the poll was 2 months old, and even Vern Kennedy, and I'll be glad to show you the email, says when he does a poll, he doesn't tell people they have to release it. You paid for it. But he said he would never have released the poll 2 months later. But in your newspaper, Tyler Bridges wrote a whole story on the poll and never released the numbers until the next day. And I'm going to say after I blasted him, maybe everybody else did too. How is that fair? And it was very pro-Edwards, and it was very anti-Trump. How is that fair in the newspaper business? What makes it fair? Now, of course, I nutted up on it because I thought it was wrong to do it the way it was doing it. How do you consider that professional? That's not professional by anybody that's in the polling business, and I know people in the poll business, and they told me the same thing. Vernon Kennedy basically said he would have never released it, but your paper released it, and then you had to the next day release all the numbers on it. I'm just asking, you did a story on a poll that nobody could figure out if it had any sense to it.
It happens every day. Every poll, David Vitter's poll when he was running, which was wrong. The Hayride releases polls. There's all kinds of groups out there that either independently or aligned with a candidate release polls. And the old days, you got the poll as a reporter, you got the crosstabs, you got the demographics, you got all the information, and you wrote your story. Today, Tyler Bridges did a story. Go online, either advocate.com or
he did a new one. He did a new one. Okay.
And this one has all the things that you say you like in the polls. So it sounds like Tyler works for you now.
Well, John, hold up, though, John. Really,
but the point is, at the time, the points that he made were, I think what he made were points that people didn't understand. And I'll explain that poll. I'm not Vern, and Vern's available anytime to be on your show. I think
Vern sent me a letter. Vern sent me a letter.
Yeah.
Vern sent me the poll.
But basically, that poll showed where everyone was when the race started. And obviously, the sitting governor would poll higher than he would, and by the end of the election, they're going to beat up on him, and we're going to cover him a little more in depth. And you're going to read more things like you read. Articles of ours are going to be in commercials. There's a commercial by the Republicans quoting Advocate criticism of John Bel Edwards. Sunday there was an article criticizing John Bel Edwards or saying that he took money from an individual that gave a large amount of money and who that individual was. So
hold up though. You wrote, John. You're right. They write the story, but there's no editorial coming out blasting Governor Edwards. I can promise you that. You got stories. You put his name in. I didn't say you didn't do that. But when it comes to editorials, they are pro Bel Edwards. Now I want to go back to the question I asked you. I said Tyler released this poll without giving anything, and I'm just asking you on the ad, don't you think that's unprofessional what Bridges did?
I think today, in the time of real time journalism, the way journalism works today different than it did before. Before, you took a lot of time to write a story. The public waited for it, and maybe you waited till Sunday. Today, if you know what goes on, and I'll remind everyone, a story goes up right away, as quick as they can. Because remember, at the time, we were competing with NOLA.com and other news agencies around the state. So when you know there's a story, and last time, I think the Monroe paper released a Vern Kennedy poll showing Scott Angel was moving up in the poll. So you hurry up to get the information online. Then you update the story again. So there'll be a story saying accident on the interstate. And then people read it, where it is. You don't know anything about it. And then an hour later, they put more up. An hour later, put more up. And over 2 or 3 days, these sites are updated. That's the way journalism is working today. There's no conspiracy. There's no agenda. They're working quickly to compete with other news agencies. And as you know, AP is in the state. There are other New York Times in the state. I think I'm criticized equally on both sides. Yesterday, there was a New York Times editorial commenting on me that I'm a conservative, and like I'm not from New Orleans, and I'm from Baton Rouge, and I bought the New Orleans paper, and so I understand different people's perspectives, especially when I don't agree with them.
But John, it's not even that. I told you honestly about the poll. I watched it. And there was nothing in there. Let me ask this question, because I got to take one more break and we'll come back and wrap it up, and you can say anything you want to say. But I got a question on somebody like Tyler Bridges. I need to know, is he a opinion guy or is he a reporter? He's an opinion reporter. Which one is he? Because I'm going to tell you what, when he does a story, he puts his opinion in a lot of the stories. And the one I'm talking about is where he put his opinion in a story and didn't even give us the numbers. So is he an opinion guy or a reporter? Which one is he?
What he did was he put the results of the poll, and you wanted more information, and he put more information.
No. That's the way they're released. Even Vern Kennedy, a guy you've had a relationship for a long time, I'll get the email and send it to you. He said, he wouldn't have released that. That's not what he does. But I'm going back. I just want to just answer it because I got to take a break. Reporter or opinion guy? I'm just kidding. Which one is he?
I love you, Moon.
No,
but let me make my point.
No, John.
Let me make my point.
Answer the question. Reporter or opinion? Why won't you tell me?
He's a reporter. He's not opinion.
Okay, well, tell him to get his opinions out of the stories because it's bad.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But, Moon, let me ask you, name one reporter you do like.
I was going to tell you. I think Mark Ballard is a good guy. I think Mark tries to get it right. Elizabeth Crisp is another one that I think.
What about Michelle Milhan? Did you like her?
Michelle Milhan, don't remember really a whole lot about her, but
she now works for John Kennedy.
She's with Kennedy, but that don't have anything to do with writing and who you work for. You do have a couple like that I think are pretty good. Your opinion people, I just think are way off. But that's why I'm asking you about the twit, Tyler Bridges, because he puts opinion in a lot of his articles, a lot of them, and I go. I mean, is he? Why is he putting opinion
going on right now? When you and I were growing up, there were more Democrats in office than Republicans, so they were getting the brunt of the scrutiny, coverage, and obviously the negative stuff.
Sure.
Today, there are more Republicans in office. Let me give you an example. The Republican parish president of Jefferson Parish, the largest Republican parish, was texting underage people. We reported that. The district attorney, Republican of St. Tammany, the largest parish that elected Bobby Jindal, that district attorney was convicted of a federal crime. We reported that. The sheriff and the assessor of Jefferson Parish at the time received patronage appointments for their wives. We reported those stories. So, yeah, there's a lot more. Okay. Jeff Landry, my personal friend, he does things. There's more coverage on him. So there are just more Republicans in office in Louisiana, and we tell the public what's going on. And so a lot of times it's the fact that there are more Republicans in office. And that's really kind of the problem we have now, the Republicans have now with Scott Angel running, Jay Darden running, and David Vitter running. Those three were spending more times attacking each other. And, of course, Jay Darden, if you had any criticism of anyone, it should be Jay Darden.
By the way, if you heard my program, nobody's criticized Jay Dartmoor and me in 20 years. Think about this, though. I want you to answer this when we come back. Would you rather your newspaper be right about a story or first? John George is my special guest. We'll come back, get that answer, and talk to him a few more minutes. And I appreciate John spending a few minutes with us. We'll take a break and be right back. Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Great to have you with us. 844-766-6607. Hickson has a hotline. Mr. John George, a businessman here in the great state of Louisiana, also owner of the Advocate, the Times-Picayune, which is the Advocate, too, and also the one in Lafayette. Actually, John, it's funny. I got a guy over here that does a little radio. He works in your sports section over here, Kevin Foote. He become a good friend. We cut up all the time. I told him I had his boss on today. He said,
you didn't list him as one of the good reporters.
Oh no. Well, look, I didn't. I meant. Remember what I told you? Though? I said when we talked to politics. I didn't want to get into the sports and all that stuff. But he's actually
it's a big organization. We have 350 people. I don't actually know and that doesn't count the carriers, the people that really do the work, people that are printing it and delivering it to your home. Yeah. Rain, sleets, hail, highway. But no, it's a very complicated business. What I was trying to explain to you, I own a famous restaurant in New Orleans called Galatoire's. I don't know how to boil an egg, but when you go in that kitchen and watch these chefs put food together, you wonder how they do it in such a short order and so consistent. Well, a newspaper is even harder because they've got to get that deadline. They got to decide what's in the paper, and I give more. This might work against me with you, but I give more freedom to my reporters, and they don't reflect my views. A lot of people say, well, we want your views in your paper, or we don't want your views in your paper. When I was in Baton Rouge, they said, no, we respect you. We think your views are good. In my own hometown in New Orleans, they're like, let the editors and them handle all the professional. I think my job is like Tom Benson's or Gail Benson with the Saints. We're not suiting up and we're not calling the plays. We're not throwing the football. We can watch a game just like anybody else. So at the end of the day, on Monday morning, I think Tom Benson has a lot to say, or Gail, God rest his soul. But Gail, who says, I didn't like the calling, the playing, what's wrong with that quarterback, what's coach doing? But, when you hire a team, and we have veteran editors, publishers, Judy Terrazotis, who ran the Gannett operation statewide in multi-state. She's a career, I would say, nonpartisan, daughter of a military person, mother of a military person, brother of the four-star general who protected us in Korea. So, I'm going back to the editorial stuff. Look, you got good people there with some nice people and families and all that, John. I'm not going there. Just real quick, couple quick things. I'm just asking you rather have it right or you rather have it quick? I'm just curious. Right every day.
Okay. Here's another one for you. I'm curious. I'm curious if you went through all your reporters and asked them if they were Democrat, liberal, or conservative, Republican. You ever thought about doing that to see really what you got? Because you can sit here and talk about no bias, but people get biased. I mean, I'm biased, but I'm admitting
you don't need to own a newspaper to know that most newspapers in this country are liberal. Most writers are liberal.
But I think you fit the mold. I think you fit the mold.
No. My paper for Moon Griffon is very left. But compared to New York Times, Huffington Post,
but you sound like now. You know what you sound like now? You sound like Governor Edwards in your paper. Y'all love comparing us to us, but if you start comparing us to somebody else, then it's a different comparison, John. I just don't think you can make the comparison. I just know that I feel like y'all very biased, especially with the governor. I think I call y'all the press secretary for the governor. I just feel like it's that strong, and y'all are affecting the race because there are people not knowing everything they need to know about the governor, and I think y'all have an avenue to do that, and you hadn't. And look, I got a minute left. I'm going to let you respond, and I'll let you go.
All right, next time I come, I want half time because I don't get the time. I hear all your points. It's really an honor to be on your show and to hear you give your perspective. I want you to know that I hear every day from readers, and I hear every day from people, and I get the feedback. And, of course, I'm the guy ultimately that hires the publishers, hires the editors. I want the truth first, I want to be fair second, and I want balance third. And that's been my goal, and it's not something you do well, you can't turn an aircraft carrier around the first day. I have also to pay the bills and keep the business running, and I think we've survived 6 years. We've done well, and I think it's because our readership has gone up. We had 11 million people on NOLA.com last month alone, so people are reading our paper. We are more balanced. Well, read today's. Your friend Tyler said the good and the bad on the governor. He has fallen in the polls, which he mentioned. Also, Risponi is risen like a rocket ship, and a lot going on there.
All right.
But let us on again. But,
all right. No, we'll do it again.
Also invite some of the editors, because you're going to be able to put people on the fire. We're engaged in the community. I speak to Rotary clubs.
Yeah.
I'm in the public, and I'm not somebody sitting back. And it's not necessarily my views. Look. I don't know if you realize, but I have some very conservative views personally, and I'm criticized on the left and the right.
I know. I just know this. I know y'all love Governor Edwards, and there's nothing gonna get in y'all way. John Georges, we will do it again, maybe in person. Thank you, sir. God bless, and thank you for being part of the program.
Appreciate it. Bye.
All right, John Georges, of course. All right, we'll take a break. We're expecting Congressman Higgins to join us. Looking forward to talking to him. We'll be right back.